Hi, and welcome to a new vlog. This week we've got a fancy animation at the beginning. This is just sort of playing around with different designs for the vlog, really. But actually, today's vlog is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be about project development. I'm just going to be talking about a project I'm working on, and really maybe how I developed it and where I'm going to go in the future, and just sort of like maybe brainstorm also a little bit for myself. The project has been sort of scanned photograms. And when I mean scanned photograms, I don't mean scanning photograms I made in the darkroom. I mean I'm making a digital photogram, so a modern day version of photograms. And really to go back to what a photogram is, it was an image. It was a photographic image created by placing objects onto photographic paper or photosensitive paper, and then exposing it to light and then developing it. What would happen is when you put the objects on, if something was slightly opaque, this would come through as a grayish tone, maybe black, depending on how well the light travels through it. And anything where light could not travel through, this would come through as black. And you could make some quite cool patterns depending on the different objects you use. Obviously, if you just use solid objects all the time, you just have a lot of black. But you could create repetitive patterns and things like this. With objects which are saying more opaque, you would get different sort of tones and a sort of strange sort of look. And I've used digital photograms before. I did a project which actually resulted in it being digital photograms when I was taking pictures of people's opinions in the street. The pictures didn't come out, but I kept the opinions written down on paper, so I scanned them. And I created these sort of like digital photograms with the whole idea of the handwriting stuff, just to sort of rescue the project in a way. But I haven't actually even created a project in a while. The last project I did was actually quite a few years ago, and that was called Human Remains, about what people leave, like strange things people leave behind in the world. And it was like sleeping bags on beaches, and it was landscape work really. So since then I haven't really done any project work. I've done singular images. I've done a lot of singular images, or triptychs, or groups of 3, or things like this, or the images have all had a linked theme because they were all taken, I don't know, at the same place. But I've done no actual project work. And the difference I see with for me between project work is something where you have an idea and you develop it, and it becomes a body of work. Whereas my pictures from Warsaw, you could call them Warsaw pictures, I suppose, and for me it wasn't really considered a project. It was like, a few times I've been out, been to Warsaw, I've taken pictures, gone back to the same places, improved some pictures, and things like that. So with this project, it started all where I wanted to photograph some flowers. The flowers died. This is me. I'm not very good at keeping flowers alive, unfortunately. Got cactuses now. They're doing well. And I wanted to photograph them, but nothing was really working in the setup I had. And I thought, well, just put them on the scanner. I'd done an experiment with using this, where I actually painted inside of a box, to black it out. Also had some bits that worked here and there. But I wanted just to have this sort of photograph but not photographed, photogram but not photogrammed, and there's a sort of like a mixture of the idea I had. And so I placed the flowers on the scanner and I scanned them. I very much on the scanner I went through some different settings to see which ones were the best ones, and then I imported it into Adobe Photoshop Raw, and that's where I then did the most of the editing. And I think I've even on my blog I have written about how I edit the images, and I wanted to create this sort of effect of, because the scanner has such a shallow depth of field, the images do look sort of like maybe a little bit dreamlike as they're like floating in and out of focus. You see something but you don't see something. And the way the images vignette in the corners is quite nice, and I also added a slight bulging effect as well. And then keeping a lot of the impurities of the image. And I think this was one of the things I didn't do with the first set of photograms I actually did using flowers, which was in the summer. I add the image of the death dance of dancing flowers, and that image, it was very, very good. I really liked it, but it was more of a mistake image, one of those sort of happy mistakes. and I liked those images, but the mistake I made was I was too obsessed with having them clean. Everything being clean on them. That was probably my biggest mistake with those images. So I really, on this one, I decided to keep imperfections. Obviously, clean the scanner. That's the first thing I really had to do. But I would keep the sort of any pollen which sort of came off the flowers onto the scanner. I would keep it for that shot and then clean the scanner afterwards. The other thing you get actually is these scan lines as well, and I kept them. That for me was actually quite important because if you develop a print and it's all streaky, that's part of the printing, of the image, and in a way, this is part of it as well. So I care about a lot of the impurities, but then there were other things I didn't like. Even with the scan image, there was a little bit of noise, way too much noise in some of them, and I did attempt that, but I did add noise, and the reason I added noise was because it just gave a bit of for me, a nice feel to it. That's the reason. Um, and then again, I did make some other changes. Like I did convert the images to black and white, and then do a split toning. But the split toning was actually very specific. It wasn't like I just randomly chose split toning. I actually chose a color from within the flower to be in the split toning. And actually, when I did the orchid, when the orchid died, more recently, when I did those images, I then took it was a slightly different purple. This one is a bit more of a red color in these ones, but that one is a bit more purple. And then again, it was one of those things where I was really trying to keep the similar method in the images, a similar processing, because I was just sort of thinking in my head, well, if they need to look like they are a group. And I think that's sometimes when you look at a project and people have like black and white and color and black and white and color, and that one's HDR and that one's not HDR. The project is a bit mishmashed. It doesn't have a continuity to it. And if I could just try and keep similar settings. And so I noted down the settings I was using with the scammer. I've noticed the time of day actually changes the view. And as you can see now with the orchid ones, you can definitely see that there's a definite change in the brightness of the image. And these were taken at a slightly different time of day, and the printer, or the printer scanner, was in a slightly different position. And that actually has affected it as well. So there's quite a lot of environmental things that to try and keep a consistent feel to the image, because these images still look like they belong. Because I don't believe that you have a project and all the images will look exactly the same and the light will be exactly the same. But only is the continuity of the way that the light is working in the image. The vignetting is one of them. The effect of the lens warping is one of them as well, and the noise is another one of them. And also the brightness in the center, that's another one. So it was really just playing around and making sure all these things would work for there to be continuity, because I didn't want it to be a group of images. Where am I taking this project now? And that's actually my big sort of like thinking about it. Because at the moment I've got about 33 images. I'm not saying that all 33 images are like the final set. Generally what I do is I just process everything. And then I do a huge culling at one point when I go, okay, I think I'm coming to the end of what I'm doing. But for me the project has two problems. Number one, I don't know what I'm trying to say with it. Normally my projects actually say something, and it's the first time I've actually come to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm saying I like flowers. I don't know. I'm still thinking about what I'm trying to say. And the other part, which I'm also still working on, is a little bit like how is this going to work in any sort of way? How am I going to use the images as a project? So I still got a lot to think about. I think the next bit I'm actually going to look at is some other things which are natural, maybe not actually not actually like flowers, but something which is natural that I can then add to it just to try and mix it up, but not try and move too far away. So I'm not going to start photogramming plastic, basically. So really, that's what I have to say about these images. I know this hasn't gone out on Tuesday. Something weird happened this week, and I'm all over the place with my scheduling. So this has gone out today on Wednesday. I hope that's okay. And actually, I'm actually quite enjoying doing this video today. because I've been looking so much about copyright, and I don't know what's going on in the world, but copyright is everywhere at the minute, and everyone's getting obsessed with some sort of copyright thing. So that's really the way the world is going. So that's it really. So you can find me on my blog, which is aperture64.wordpress.com. You can find me on Twitter, which is @aperture64. I am on Facebook, but I'm not quite sure how much longer I'm going to keep the Facebook page active. For me, it's not actually doing anything, really. I know some people would say, well, you should always have a Facebook page, but not really working for me. But I do have a Facebook page, which is Aperture64, which is spelled 64, not with the numbers. And I have a Tumblr account, which I'm also trying to keep updated. So apart from that, I hope you can pop up to my blog, and I hope to speak to you next week. Bye-bye.